Why Procedamus? I remember the day after my ordination, the morning of my first Mass, vesting in the sacristy, putting on the amice, putting on the alb, the cincture, the maniple, the stole, the vestments. I remember the 10 years that I had been preparing for this moment. Aside from the emotions and the nerves, I was aware of what offering the holy sacrifice of the Mass means for myself and for all the faithful. But additionally, given the context of the current persecution of the traditional Catholic faith in the world and in the church. I grabbed my chalice, I grabbed my beretta, looked at the crucifix, bowed, and said, Procedamus in pacem, to which the altar servers replied, In nomine Christi, Amen. I put on my beretta, and we processed out to the altar to offer the holy sacrifice of the Mass, the traditional Latin Mass, the Mass of the ages. Ascending the steps of the altar, I felt only gratitude to our Lord for having allowed me to be an instrument in preserving that which is true, good, and beautiful for future generations, for the ages to come. As long as I'm physically able, this Mass will continue to be offered. This spirit of determination, this spirit of perseverance, is that to which I would love to invite all of you to share. The first annual Procedamus Gala is organized to support the mission of the Oblates of St. Augustine and the old Roman Catholic See of Caer-Glow to preserve the traditional Latin Mass and the traditional Catholic faith for future generations. Procedamus.
And we're live. How are you, Father?
Doing well, brother. How are you?
Doing great. I feel very awkward because I don't know how people usually do this. Like, I don't know. We're live like every week, right, on our show for stuff about the interior life.
Right.
Especially when we finished our book, but we were talking, and we had Farmer, you and I were talking about a couple of things that were going on. One was that Cardinal Echt, or I don't know how you pronounce those names.
It's from I guess Holland or the Netherlands or something.
That's right. So he comes out, and then Silere non possum, whom, you know, it was very sad because I used to follow them during the Francis pontificate.
Mm-hmm.
I actually could never tell if they were pro or against, which I suppose was kind of good. You know, what's interesting about them, Father, is that they seem to be conservative, really, just overall conservative. And so they were against the corruption stuff and against the attacks on the Mass. But then something happened recently that they started, I maybe, and again, I don't know this, Father, but when Cardinal Burke came out and said, oh, it's ideologues that are opposing like Vatican II and whatever, maybe that was like their code to go off of those lines. And so anyway, so Solero Non Possum posted, this is an Italian sort of media outlet. The whole it's on the blog. The whole thing that they do is they just cover the Pope, basically. So anyway, and Cardinal, what's his name?
I have to look it up. It's very difficult to pronounce. It's not a let's see. E-I-J-K. Eect. Eek.
Okay, there we go.
E-I-J-K. Cardinal Eek.
So he comes out, and Silero Non Possum says that he said, because I suppose he's considered a conservative in the Vatican II world, which that would essentially mean that these people are more Ratzingerian, sort of like Cardinal Sarah, more or less. But Cardinal comes out and says that divorced and remarried people can receive Holy Communion as long as they're living chastely. And I saw this, Father, and I told you, it was probably before or after our show this week. I said, Father, so they believe that I can sleep on the same bed as another woman, as a woman that is not my wife, and receive Holy Communion. This is insane. So it would follow that you can be not married, because divorced and remarried people are not married. You can just be living with your girlfriend, and as long as you're living chastely, you can receive Holy Communion. This is even the conservatives seem to be now taking Amoris Laetitia and institutionalizing it.
Right. And you know, there's certain different levels of this, because as we all know, you're not, well, first and foremost, if you're married and then for some tragic reason, whatever, you have to separate, you still have the obligation to work diligently to come back together. Like separation, the church has never taught that separation should be and can be a permanent situation. So that's the first thing, is that separation cannot be a permanent situation. But when it comes to, couples that are validly married and go and create children with other people, if they didn't create offspring from their first marriage, but they were validly married, they still retain that obligation to try to reconcile the first marriage. Now, the church has always, in one sense, has said, look, okay, for the good of the children, you can maintain this relationship. But if one of the people in the couple want to get back together, there's still that primary obligation to get back together with your actual spouse. But if both spouses, both people have separate relationships where they've created offspring and they haven't created offspring in their original marriage, the church has allowed them to live as brother and sister. Now, what does this mean? Obviously, you're not allowed to put yourself in the near occasion of sin. Intentionally putting yourself in the near occasion of sin is in and of itself a sin. And so to sleep in the same bed with someone who is not your spouse is obviously a near occasion of sin. Is obviously a near occasion of sin. And so I remember reading an article of a priest who wrote about his own experience of growing up and then learning that the whole reason why his parents slept in different bedrooms was because they weren't actually technically married in the church. And so they in order to avoid the near occasion of sin, they actually slept in separate bedrooms. And so that was always a curious thing for him. But they broke the news to him, obviously, when he was older. But he admired their sacrifice and everything else to continue raising him in the Catholic faith and everything else. And also it became a testimony to him of how seriously the faith meant to even them. So it's not just about living chastely in the sense of not just doing the deed. You know what I mean? There are extra sacrifices that you would need to make in living this chaste reality. If your primary responsibilities of getting back with your actual spouse can't be met. And I think that's one of the things that the church is kind of, well, first and foremost with annulments and everything else, like with granting annulments with people with 5, 6, 7 children. Like, what are they doing to those children? And just willy-nilly just granting annulments. I mean, those children are hurt. They receive scars and wounds that then go and affect their future marriages. So the church not only affects the marriage of whose annulment that they're giving to, but also their children. Because then we see that the annulment actually occurred because one of the spouses found someone who was attractive and went on with their fantasy and found some sort of psychological reasons where they could annul their first marriage. And now the 6 children that was the fruit of their marriage, now they're all scarred. Now they're all wounded.
Yeah.
And so the church is actually destroying even future marriages by actually being just, I mean, not just complicit, but negligent in the formation of in marriage formation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's get a little bit here into the comments. Father Mark Becker, hello, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. Caritas Veritate, God bless you both. Thank you so much. Let's see. There's a really 3 really good comments that yes. So Amy, thank you so much for the comment. I have not heard of that book, Fatima and Twilight. Have you heard about the book, Father?
Nope.
So really, thank you for the recommendation. That sounds like a really interesting book. Let's see, just going here in order. And yes, Caritas Veritate, can you touch on the true Catholic understanding of religious freedom and also on the separation of church and state? So, Father, tell us a little bit the true Catholic understanding of religious freedom.
Well, there's only one true Catholic. Hi, Miss Casey. There's only one true Catholic understanding of religious freedom, and that you are free to be Catholic. Simple as. You're not free to be anything else. You're free to be Catholic because the only true freedom is the only freedom Real freedom is in the truth, and Catholicism is the truth. So the truth sets you free. Being Catholic makes you free. So that's what religious freedom actually means. You have the freedom to be a Catholic. Now, the church is always tolerated because of the necessity that we can't force people to be Catholic. It has to be by their own volition, their own will. We tolerate the fact that people may err, just like we tolerate that people sin. Of course, we punish them for their sin, but we have this tolerance because we can't literally. We're not like Muslims where we kill people if they don't decide to convert. But that's a completely different thing than freedom. Tolerance is different than freedom. Freedom is like, oh, everything is good, everything is equal, everything's the same. You can be whatever you want. No, that's not what the church is. If the church has ever said pre-Vatican II the words of religious freedom, it's really a sense of tolerance. And the separation of church and state, that's a liberalist idea. That's not a Catholic idea. One of the things I'm doing here on Restless Heart Media is I have a playlist of this class I'm teaching every Wednesday night here at Our Lady of Good Hope Old Roman Catholic Parish of the philosophy of Aristotle, and I'm doing it particularly to help make teens. I mean, we have several teens in our parish, woke proof. So I'm giving a whole philosophical framework to really understand what the natural law actually is. And where I'm culminating this class, of course, it's going to culminate in the Nicomachean Ethics, but of course, I'll infuse that with St. Thomas and everything else, of the fact that all of our laws and politics should be informed about helping to help people flourish, be happy. And so when it comes to church and state, the church actually has this duty to inform the state of what it is to help make people happy. And so all of our laws should be infused with our morality, with our understanding of human nature and what we're destined to. And so there really is no separation. There's a separation in the hierarchical realms, in the sense that a bishop shouldn't be a mayor, a bishop shouldn't be a governor of Missouri, the Pope shouldn't be also the president of the United States, I guess. So there's different offices that are separate, but that doesn't mean that our faith can't be implemented precisely in our laws. So like leftists will say, that are alphabet people, oh, you can't infuse your morality on the state, so we should be able to be free to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, whatever letters you want to be. But no, that's absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. Our laws should be there to encourage people to do what is good and deter them from doing what is evil. That's not a difficult concept to grasp.
There's I don't know if you've read this book, Father. You may have it. The book Before Church and State.
Yes, I have it.
Just look it up. If you all have never heard of it, that I found was a very helpful book in my understanding, because what happens is that, and this is not a criticism on the United States at all. This is a criticism on all liberal countries: Mexico, United States, all of Europe, all of South America. We have grown up in with a liberal perspective and a liberal point of view. So when that happens, the Catholic view that we had in Christendom is so foreign to us that it's difficult for us to even put it into a solid idea.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what this book talks about and what it proves is that back in the day, there's no distinction. Like, the idea of a church and state is a very an Enlightenment idea. Like, even the idea that church and state would be separate. The kings and the princes used to work hand in hand with the church in the governance of the realms. Really, it was a very, very much there, and which really, I don't really want to. So I'm not going to say the word. Some people have a conflict because in this book it talks about one particular scenario. So, for example, the church, if they would excommunicate somebody, guess who would actually put that in place? The state,
civil authorities. Yeah.
So these were one with the understanding that the bishops and the church really is above the state. So this is a faculty that is given to the lay state to run temporal affairs. but it was not seen as a separation. This idea for us comes with the Enlightenment, with the American, with the French Revolution, and everything that came after that, because the princes of Europe said, we don't want the church anymore, because the church would ensure, for example, in the Americas, the church would get in the way a lot of times of the princes of ensuring that they were not abusing their workers, and many things like that. So the bad rulers would not like the church. They would not like the bishops. They would not like the friars, the monks, and so on and so forth, because they were always, and again, not in a noble sort of way, not in the way that we see it now, but there is a legitimate Catholic point of view of, for example, work and what is exploitation, and what is allowed and what is not allowed. But in general, our ancestors would not have seen it as a separation, but it's a sort of one order, because both the state and the church are working for under the social kingship of Christ for one end, which is to push people toward living virtuous lives, and whatever is in opposition to that was generally seen as something that was not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, let's see if we can hopefully that answered the question. Caritas Veritate, thank you so much. Just reminding everybody, we don't have a set topic. We're moving on here to our next question, which is a wonderful question. But we have no special topic. If anybody has any questions or any comments, put them in there. Or maybe, Father, I posted about Queen Camilla getting the order of Pius IX. I hadn't even heard about this until I actually saw somebody posting about it. So there's stuff that's going on that we haven't even heard about. Never assume that we know absolutely everything that's what's going on. Put it in the comments. All right, next question. This one's for you, Father. Would you explain what is meant by the Old Roman Catholic See of Caer-Glow? Beautiful name.
Well, it's kind of long. It's kind of complicated. I have a playlist here on Restless Heart Media going through the history, how Father John encountered the Old Roman Catholic Caer-Glow, and then why he specifically chose it for the Oblates of St. Augustine and myself, in the sense that, it has a long and complicated but fascinating history. But the reality is, here, today, now, obviously, I was not born in the 17th century. Impossible, right? I'm here now. Just like every other priest here in the organization right now, all of us are here because we want the traditional Catholic faith, in contrast to the Second Vatican Council and the Novus Ordo and the synodal circus, as I call it. Because it's impossible for the synodal circus to be an actual church, because it's not focused on God, it's focused on man. So the reality is, each and every single person here just honestly doesn't really care about the history, even though the history is in and of itself fascinating. We're all here simply to be Catholic. The church, through the 1960s to today, has confirmed our lineage to be valid. So there's no question of validity, even if some random anon accounts on Twitter will try to throw that out there. It's like, we have documents from Rome. It's there's no question. But the reality is, we're just here preserving the Catholic faith. Now, one of the disappointing things about traditional Catholicism is that all the traditional groups seem to be divided, and not only divided, but against each other. And they're against each other, unfortunately, particularly about benefactors, because one of the things that is common among all these other traditional groups, Sedevacantes groups, is that they put their benefactors before their priests. And so one of the hard things about joining one of these groups is that if you're joining it as one of the priests, if a benefactor who's a very rich benefactor accuses you of something, a lot of these bishops will side with the benefactor over the priest, because the benefactor is more beneficial to the organization than just one priest. But here at Caer-Glow, we're focused first and foremost on the mission, more so than pleasing somebody who has an agenda. And so our mission, obviously, is to preserve the traditional Latin Mass, the traditional sacraments, and provide it to as many of the lay people as possible. What does Caer-Glow mean? Now, we have some random website on the internet that is actually, the person who created the website lost the password, and so it's like completely blocked off. It's unable to be edited, but it has like all the history, has the table of apostolic succession, everything else. He lost it in like the 2000s or whatever, so it's like it hasn't been updating even since then. But Caer-Glow is just a phrase that comes from where Arnold Harris Matthews, who received orders from the Old Catholics in Utrecht before they went modernist, where he originally was from. So it's a titular see, so to speak. It's just the name that he took to identify his specific group, separate from everybody else. So it has, I mean, it's like from like Glasgow, Scotland, or something like that. But it doesn't really mean anything other than just it's a unique name to specifically identify the group that which Arnold Harris Matthews originally created. First and foremost, at that time he was trying to help Anglicans return back to the church, but it's just a direct lineage back to him. So, I mean, it's kind of a Scottish-ish name of a particular territory in Scotland, but for us, again, all it means is that we can trace our lineage back to something that's valid, obviously. And the fact that we're here not out of some sort of reactionary thing pre 1965 or anything, but that we're here, all of us are here simply to preserve the traditional Catholic faith as a result of the Second Vatican Council.
And adding on to that, Father, it's so a lot of people say, "Oh, why old Roman Catholic See of Caer-Glow? Like, why?" Because a lot of people slander you and Bishop Mikkel online and say, "Oh, you're old Catholic," and these people these people know that it's old Roman Catholic, and we do have to get accustomed when we are in the present state of confusion and crisis in the church. We have to get accustomed to be very particular about distinctions. So old Catholics is not the same as old Roman Catholic, and even old Roman Catholic doesn't explicitly mean the old Roman Catholic See of Caer-Glow. So that's why it's so specific. But this in particular helps identify specifically which group we are talking about.
Right. So so when we're like you just said, when we're talking about our specific group, we actually kind of trying to leave aside old Roman Catholic, because there are many groups. I mean, it's not a copyrighted name, so there are many groups that can just. I mean, Alberto, you can just decide today that you're a bishop, whatever else, with no validity, whatever. So you just call yourself a bishop and say you're old Roman, whatever, and no one can sue you for it because old Roman Catholic isn't copyrighted. And so that's why we kind of leave it aside, and we specifically say Caer-Glow because that's what particularly belongs to our specific group. But it's just a name to identify a group and not necessarily anything. For instance, like it doesn't identify a creed, a set of beliefs, or anything else like that. You have to actually get to know the group to know what they believe. So maybe, as you were saying, old Catholic. Nowadays, there's some old Catholics that ordain women, whatever else. Deny Vatican I, but for us old Roman Catholics, but specifically Caer-Glow, we accept Vatican I, accept papal fallibility, accept the dogma of the Assumption, Pius XII, so accept everything, all 20 doctrinal councils. And what we say about the Second Vatican Council is we give it the assent due by any Catholic, which thankfully is not much. So,
and Diana, thank you. So thank you so much for the question. And no, I think these are important questions that a lot of people have. So I'm thankful that you asked for it, that you asked for a clarification. And now another aspect, Father, that we usually don't talk about a lot is that you, unfortunately, because the modernists have a hold on the institution, complete and absolute hold on the institutional church. In the United States, they have a sort of a copyright on the name Catholic. So it has happened to a lot of people that they go out and about, oh, such and such is calling himself a Catholic priest, and the diocese sues them, and then diocese wins. And so this is also why the distinction old Roman Catholic is, oh, you say you're an old Roman Catholic, blah, blah, blah. Yes, because there are implications to the crisis in the church and to the modernists having a complete and absolute hold on the institution. They are not Catholic, but they say they're Catholic. And unfortunately in the United States, there's not there's not an understanding of the crisis in the church institutionally in the government. So,
it's true. So with Vigano and the SSPX resistance, this is a future situation that they're gonna fall into, is the fact that actually we saw it up in Michigan, more or less recently, within the past year, of one of the dioceses in Michigan releasing a statement that a particular priest that was supposedly ordained by Vigano. I say supposedly because there's no way for any of us to check. I mean, how can we go ask Vigano? Like, how do we confirm that he was actually ordained by Vigano, right? But that he was going around calling himself a Catholic priest, and the Catholic diocese is like, what? He's not part of our diocese. Now, we can't confirm this, all that kind of stuff. He could be just some random lunatic, So it's important for us to, even for legal purposes, to have these different names, but also this understanding that even though we go by a different name, that regarding our faith, our creed, that we're still traditionalist Catholics, but it's all for legal purposes, also to protect our assets. People donate to us money to preserve the faith, and how do we just go lose it in a lawsuit to the local diocese, to the local modernist diocese? That's not cool.
Yep, absolutely, and it protects you all. It protects the benefactor. It really protects everybody. So, because there really are ramifications to the crisis in the church, aside from just whatever's online or whatever we see in the real life of seeing in the parishes, the rainbow masses and all that stuff. There are jurisdictional, in terms of the law, aspects that the groups have to navigate, and that's the reality of the situation. So anyway, okay, closing down that topic. Let's see, Caritas Veritate. What are your thoughts on the future of the TLM under the current pontificate, and which TLM groups would be okay for the faithful to attend if it gets worse? I'll start out on this one. Let's see. So my future on the TLM under the current pontificate is in my opinion, is just exactly as it has been going. So before people start saying, "Oh, you're judging" or whatever, I'm not judging. We are saying that they are closing down Latin masses. And then Cardinal Sarah, who has met with Leo, and Cardinal Sarah said that he has discussed the topic, and then Cardinal Sarah says, "I don't know where the topic is going. I don't know what's the future of the Latin Mass." So I'm going to take and see, Father, this is what I do, and people get mad at me, get mad at us, because we're like, look, Leo met with Jimmy Martin, so we sort of know where that's going. But anyway. So I'm going to establish here two things. One thing is that Latin masses keep getting canceled.
Mm-hmm.
The second aspect is that Cardinal Sarah, who unlike you, Father, who unlike pretty much most people in the world, has actually met with Leo and talked about the topic, because Cardinal Burke did not say that he talked about, he didn't really answer the question of whether he talked about the topic. Cardinal Sarah did discuss the issue with Prevost, and Cardinal Sarah says, I don't know what the future is. The Leo is aware of the battle, and Cardinal Sarah also says this is a battle for the faith. So what happens, Father Martin, is that when people say, "Oh, you Alberto, you're just Amy, he just prayed with King Charles. No more needs to be said." I completely agree, and this is going to be something important for us to understand, that judging is not seeing and hearing. That's one thing that we talked about, Father, in our series on Introduction to the Devout Life. We see St. Francis de Sales, a doctor of the church, telling us that judging is when you don't have enough information, then you're making a judgment. So to be honest, Father, the people that say that the TLM is going to flourish under Leo are committing the error of judging, because they don't know that. Meanwhile, Cardinal Sarah, who met with him, said, I don't know where this is going. And what we can see with our eyes is that the traditional Latin masses keep getting canceled. And then we saw Cardinal Burke come out in his statement basically condemning not only the supposed AI videos, which nobody has seen, as far as I know, but he was also condemning the opposition to Burke. He said, this is what was, and I don't want to deviate from our question. That's why I'm keeping it here on the screen. But Father, Cardinal Burke says that he has no issues with any teaching or governance of Leo XIV, meaning that he doesn't oppose Sister Simona Brambilla having the position of a cardinal. And so anyway, so my view is that under Leo, the Latin Mass will continue getting canceled until we get to the point where we have the FSSP and the institutes organizationally. And to be honest, Father, the people that I'm talking to, that I've talked to, that are in attendance at this listed, so to speak, TLMs, a lot of them, especially the ones that agree with what we're talking about and we talk about in this type of shows, they are excited. We are excited for the cancellation of more illicit Latin masses because that will draw the battle lines. That will force priests, and we've seen it. We saw it in Knoxville. The priest that read a letter from the pulpit saying basically you need to surrender and unite to the Novus Ordo. I can't imagine a father doing that. That's unbelievable. And which TLM groups would be okay for the faithful to attend if it gets worse? We may have different views here, Father. I can only really talk about me personally. For example, when it comes to the Institute, I have a very limited experience with them, very, very limited. And I know that everybody says, "Oh, the Institute is the most beautiful," whatever. I was not very impressed. And but then again, I know people that are friends of mine that some of which came into tradition and into the faith under an Institute priest, and they say, "Oh, wait, the Institute is fine with the Novus Ordo." My Institute priest that catechized me basically said, "If you don't have access to a Latin Mass, don't go to the Novus Ordo." So wow, I had never heard that the Institute was fine with attendance at the Novus Ordo. So essentially, Father, my opinion is that we have to take it on a case-by-case basis. We know that the diocesan Latin masses are not blanket safe because if you're attending diocesan mass, if you're traveling or on vacation and you're attending mass with a priest that would be fine being the chorale and offering the masses that have already a death sentence, then I don't know what to say. That doesn't seem very fruitful to me, because they are obviously fully modernist and believe in Vatican II. So, and so I don't really know. I think it just goes on a case by case basis. What do you think, Father?
Well, I think the situation is different if you're just traveling and just trying to find a mass, right? You go to a mass that's valid, Jerusalem mass. You just go there, stop in one time, then go home. I think the situation is more realistic whenever you're trying to find something more around your specific area where you live and where to go most often, where to go to mass. And to be honest, it's really just, for me, a general epistle, because every priest is different. As you said, there might be an Institute priest that says, yeah, sure, go to Novus Ordo if you can't go to the TLM to fulfill your obligation. You might find another one that says, don't go to the Novus Ordo. And you find this in the FSSP as well, whatever else. You might find people in the FSSP says, don't go, if you can't come to the FSSP mass, basically, if you can't come to FSSP, don't go to mass. Don't go to SSPX. Don't go to Sede Vacantes. Don't go to Novus Ordo. Just, if you can't come to FSSP, don't go to mass. Like there's FSSP priests that say this. So, to be honest, the position of Caer-Glow in particular is we're here to participate in the restoration, the movement of the restoration. So we have no animosity towards any specific group. The only group, actually, truly the only bishop that we have a real issue with is Bishop Sanborn, the Sede Vacantes Bishop Sanborn. We have no issue with Sede Vacantism in principle. It's plausible. It could probably be true. It's above our pay grade to decide. But Bishop Sanborn himself is creating, out of his own personal reflections, mortal sins, like going to an unicum mass, a mass that references Pope Francis or Pope Leo, whatever, or whoever is Pope, in the canon, as a mortal sin that's worse than abortion. That's worse than abortion. And he's not giving people the last rites based on the fact of whether or not they attend masses that mention the Pope in the canon. Whereas the CMRIs will allow you to attend them because they know that, if the priest is offering the mass in union with a heretic, that's the priest's personal sin, but it doesn't inflict anything upon the faithful who are attending the mass simply because they're attending the mass. The lay people don't have any control over what the priest does at the altar, and of course they shouldn't. So it's not reflective of the person, of the lay person, what the priest does at the altar. So the CMRI doesn't hold that against the lady attending an unicum mass. But Sanborn will particularly investigate to see whether or not you have attended these mass, to decide whether or not he wants to give you the last rites. And to me, bizarre, absolutely bizarre, un-Catholic, completely un-Catholic. And so really, Caer-Glow has that position. Like Sanborn, no. Bishop Pivarunas, fine. Bishop McGuire up in Cincinnati, fine. SSPX, fine. SSPX Resistance, fine. Even diocesan TLMs, FSSP, SSPX. Make sure your kids are raised Catholic. Make sure your kids are raised Catholics. That's our position. We're really in a battle, and we're few and far between. We're very, very spread out. We don't have the luxury of being extremely particular and critical of everybody. But when it comes to judging people based on whether or not they come to an Unicum Mass and whether you're going to get the last rites because you went to an SSPX Mass, Sanborn is off the rails. I'm sorry, he's off the rails.
So, regarding the mentioning Leo in the canon or whatever, that would seem to me, Father, again, my untrained mind, that it's almost like an error or something like that in fact. So, for example, if you believe that somebody died, and so you mentioned their name in the momentum for the dead, and they're actually living, that doesn't make the mass sacrilegious.
No.
I mean, or even something as far as like maybe you're offering the mass, maybe somebody asks you gives you a mass type and asks you for a mass, and you later find out that person was a Satanist or something like that. Well, you didn't have all the information. That doesn't make the mass sacrilegious or sinful for attend to the people that are attending it. Mm-hmm. So that seems to me very bizarre to say that. What really also I also find bizarre, Father, is that we hear, oh, sedevacant to this, sedevacant to that. But what's important for us to realize is that even within sedevacantist bishops, they have differences in thoughts and differences in opinions regarding the practical solutions to the crisis in the church. So I don't think that we should fall into the game of, for example, judging the sedevacantist clerics under the scope of what people online are saying, because the reality of the situation is that the opinions that priest may have would be different from the ones that another priest under another group or another bishop may have, and they all use the title sedevacantist. So that's why I'm against browbeating people from either side with, oh, you're a sedevacantist, or oh, you're not a sedevacantist, or whatever. Because even within those groups, they have significant differences. Thesis and totalists are completely views on ecclesiology, and so.
And well, here's the thing. The whole reason why this is a crisis is because this situation is not supposed to exist. We're always supposed to have a Catholic Pope. And so no matter what, every position is going to have a square to circle. Every position is going to have something that they're going to have to, bend over backwards to try to theologically justify. That's always going to end up on, just merely probable or possible, but not really convincing or even absolute. And so that's why I think we have to give each and every single position plausibility, because this situation is not supposed to exist. If there was one position that was absolutely certain, then you have to stop calling this a crisis. Stop calling it a crisis, and then do what you need to do. So if the totalist or sedeprovisionist situation, whatever else, is absolutely certain, fine. Then elect a pope. Elect a pope. But if you're refusing to elect a pope, you're admitting that it's just a mere crisis that it's beyond your control. And if that's the situation, then you can't bind people morally to the extent of not giving Catholics the last rite simply because they wanted to raise their children going to mass. It's insane.
There we go. Great question. So now, do you for the first part of the mass, Father, do you agree with me that they're within the licit institutional Latin masses that they will continue to eradicate them as they can?
Oh yeah. So this is one of the things I wanted to bring up too, because back in 2020 when I started this journey, when I left the Society of St. Augustine in the Archdiocese of Kansas City, Kansas, because Father John's offered the Church Latin Mass, and then I love to go, and so we were kicked out of the Archdiocese of Kansas City, Kansas, under the very, very, very pro-life Archbishop Naumann, that gets plenty of praise in the online newspapers or whatever else, like National Catholic Register and Rossichelli, whatever else. Oh, he's so pro-life. That means he's Catholic. Dude, I have so much under, behind the scenes or whatever else. Like he persecuted the Traditional Latin Mass, and yet people are praising him just because he's pro-life. Yet Kansas was the first state that voted to, popular vote to allow abortion. Okay, great job, Archbishop Metropolitan Naumann. for letting your whole state succumb to abortion. Very pro-life. Anyway, so we left that, and so there are plenty of people shooting us at options. Oh, Father Martin, if you have a religious vocation, you should go to the Transalpine Redemptorists, the Missionaries of St. John the Baptist, Clear Creek, the Wyoming monks, whatever else. Okay, well, let's look at that. The Missionaries of St. John the Baptist down in Kentucky, they were suppressed, no longer exist. If I had gone there, I would have had yet another place to have to go. I'm off on my journey again. Transalpine Redemptorists kicked out of New Church, New Zealand, deciding this past week to stay there. Basically, they've decided where I am now to accept their fate and just continue with their own property, whether the church considers them systematic or not. Don't care. Okay, fine. That's where I am now. So I would have ended up in the exact same place. People was like, "Oh, go to Bishop Strickland in Tyler, Texas." Okay, well, he was removed. Like I said, he would be. I had actually a friend, a priest friend, who started an oratory at his Veritatis Splendor Catholic Village. Took several seminarians from Louisiana to be a part of that oratory. Now, what I know about several of these dioceses in Louisiana is that they have a policy that if a seminarian leaves their diocese, that they don't take them back. And so they, entered the home diocese in Louisiana. They decided to leave because they thought this was for sure a thing. And in Tyler, Texas, Bishop Strickland is the bishop. They thought they were going to get ordained priests there. Nope. Done. Kicked out. Now they can't go back to their home diocese. I have no idea where they ended up. I have to contact Father M to figure out what happened with these vocations, because they were promised something. We all knew, if you were honest, we all knew what would happen, but they decided to just cover their eyes, not see the truth, be, fake optimistic or whatever else. And now these young men who had vocations, who were persevering, who were trying to keep, what happened to them? Did we lose them? That's a real question. Did we lose them? And so I would want to look at this priest in his eyes, like, what did you do to these vocations? What did you do to these vocations? Did they give up because you deceived them, or because you refused to look at things honestly and you wanted to be super optimistic? So that's my issue with Tyler, Texas, and Bishop Strickland. Like, this trying to be super optimistic and not being realist of what the situation truly is and what the risks truly are. Nobody wanted to analyze the risks. Father John and I, we analyzed all the risks, which is why we ended up where we are. It's because this was the sure place to preserve the Mass and the faith. This was the sure place to preserve the Mass and the faith. So, all these things that continue to happen in the news, all these things could be happening in the news. It's like, we're vindicated. I don't want to be the guy that continually says, I told you so, told you so, told you so. Like, here's the reality. It's like, we continue to be vindicated, and then people still support other people, other communities or other organizations that their money ends up going to the Novus Ordo institutions instead of those who are actually preserving the traditional Latin Mass and the Church of Catholic faith. Guys, eventually, the people that are preserving the Church of Latin Mass are going to have to fold because there's no resources. All your resources you gave to those who you were optimistic about, and they caved, they were closed down, or whatever else, and now everybody's left with nothing. It's just
like the Institute in Chicago. Like the Institute in Chicago.
Tell us about that, Alberto.
Yeah, so the Institute in Chicago, isn't that where they had their national headquarters? I believe in under Cardinal Cupich. And long story short, they had an issue with their prior building, and then got burned down. I think. Am I right? I'm just talking off the cuff here. I wasn't thinking about bringing up the topic tonight. So they had their building burns down. They take over this additional spot, and they sign basically an agreement or a contract with Cardinal Cupich that says that space would be used for whatever the Cardinal of Chicago wants. And then later on, Cardinal Cupich said, "Okay, you need to leave my diocese," and they left. And period, end of story. And people within the vicinity, they were left without the Latin Mass.
I don't know if they left. So,
that's right. That's right.
The way I remember the story, that was like their national headquarters. But so when the building burned down, they wanted to buy the property from the Archdiocese of Chicago, so that when they raised the funds, all that money, the millions of dollars that was required to restore the place, would be for the benefit of the institute and its congregation and its faithful. And so the agreement that they made with Chicago was that, yeah, you keep by the building, but the Archdiocese of Chicago still somehow owns whatever happens within that specific structure. And so they raised all the money to restore it full, pristine, whatever else. But then when Cardinal Supich says you have to offer one Latin Novus Ordo a month on a Sunday, they said we can't do that. It's like, okay, well then you're closed down. So the institute continues to own the structure, the bricks that build the actual structure. They continue to own the structure, but they have no rights over what goes on within it, the religious services that go on within it. And so ultimately, the archdiocese went out on that. Okay, so these millions of dollars that were donated by the faithful to preserve the traditional Latin Mass for the Institute of Christ the King, ultimately, they're without a Mass in the Archdiocese of Chicago for the Institute of Christ the King. They're without it, because that's the kind of deals the Institute of Christ the King makes with Rome. That's the kind of deals. And so that's why, donating to these sorts of Ecclesia Dei communities, nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed.
So precisely as I was going to mention that, Father, whenever we give money to the to FSSP, Institute of Christ the King, that whatever they do, when the bishop, if let's say that they fundraise $500,000 or whatever to remodel the new apostolate that they received or something like that, whenever the bishop says, so a new bishop comes in and says, okay, you're living, that's it. The bishops have the right to do that, which in a sense, Father, the Ecclesia Dei communities have less rights than like diocesan priests. So that's kind of interesting. So let's see. Derek 3581 says, does the See of Caer-Glow claim to have ordinary jurisdiction?
Oh, that's a fun one.
This is a fun question, Derek. To be honest, I think, Father, I don't know, maybe you agree, maybe you don't, but in my opinion, the right man to answer this question would be His Excellency Bishop Mikkel. Maybe we can have him on one of these streams, and we can save this question, and he would really be able to give us a much better answer than I think you or I could do.
Well, but real quickly, I'll say it this way: there's an argument that we have ordinary jurisdiction. However, practically speaking, given the fact that it's merely an argument, we operate as if we don't. So we operate basically based on supplied jurisdiction, meaning Bishop Mikkel never delegates anybody the faculties to perform a confirmation unless it's in the nature of death, because canon law, provides a priest, the baby dying or whatever else, to confirm them. But for instance, Bishop Mikkel will never delegate to me the faculties to confirm an adult. So we operate based on supplied jurisdiction, but there's a solid argument that Bishop Mikkel and several of the bishops have that we actually do have ordinary jurisdiction. But sacramentally, we quite frankly, we don't risk it. I'm not going to risk it. We're not going to put anything in jeopardy. So, so the answer is possibly yes, but it's not something that we're gonna put at risk, or we're gonna put out there as if like we're better than everybody else or anything like that. So we operate the same way as everybody else does, supply jurisdiction based on the crisis.
Diana, surrender to divine providence. Yes, absolutely. That what's interesting with surrender to divine providence, as we've been talking about for the last few weeks in our series on self-abandonment to divine providence, is, however, Father, that we have to do what is within our reach. So failing to take the actions that Almighty God is calling us to take would be problematic and would be possibly pusillanimous, sinful, and so on and so forth. So, for example, as a father, you do surrender to divine providence, but at the same time, there is a reality that a family has to be provided for. So this taking the actions that Almighty God is calling us to take is part of surrendering to divine providence. And we know, I think that those of us that are in this stream, we know that the Catholic faith, it was instituted by Christ, and that the institution cannot be used to destroy the Catholic faith. That's not the purpose of the church that Christ instituted, which is the Catholic Church, was not so that the faith could be destroyed. It's the opposite. It's so that the
Right.
faith can be defended and promoted, not so that it's destroyed. The purpose of canon law, the reason canon law exists, is to protect the church, to help in the mission of the church, that it can be administered correctly as it needs to be administered, not to destroy the church. So canon law cannot be used to destroy the church. And then just lastly on this specific topic, so we get told, oh, look, Padre Pio obeyed when he was suppressed. Yes, because there was other traditionalists, so to speak, places where the faithful were able to have access to the faith within that same community, even, or essentially anywhere else. That's not the case. That's not the case right now. And
Did we lose Alberto? Is anybody else with me? Hello? If I'm the one that's frozen, someone put something in the comments. So I don't know if I'm frozen or if Alberto's got frozen. That's probably one of the problems having just two people online, is I don't know who's frozen. Am I frozen or is he frozen? Okay. Okay, he crashed. Okay, thank you. Okay, so well, he's back. You're back.
Was it me that left?
Yeah, it was you.
Okay, great. That's good news. I didn't know what was going on. So anyway, so just finishing that up. So we have to take the actions that Almighty God is calling us to. That's fortitude and other virtues. It's not pusillanimity, which would be to, essentially, if it was up to the modernist, the institution and the trappings of the faith, like the nice stoles that Pope Leo wears or whatever, those would be kept without any substance. But it's the other way around. Those things exist for the faith, not the other way around.
You know, here's people are always like, faith or obedience, faith or obedience. Okay, what tells me that I should be obedient is the faith. But if the faith could be constantly overturned regarding same-sex blessings or whatever else, eventually people say, oh, you don't need to be obedient. But all those sacrifices everybody made based on obedience, okay, then they're nothing, because that wasn't a part of the faith. If anything and everything could be overturned later on, then what are we all becoming martyrs for? Like, why am I going to die for something that, 10 years from now can be overturned? Like St. John the Baptist having his head chopped off for defending marriage. Now Amoris Laetitia. Like, people ask me, because this is a huge question in Sedevacantis and R&R and all that kind of stuff. So the SSPX has their own canonical tribunal for annulments, and so does the CMRI. And so people ask, by what authority these people have to declare annulments, because annulments require a juridical authority from a local bishop with the 1983 code, local diocese, to declare a marriage null and void and not binding under canon law. Fair question. But now that Amoris Laetitia allows those who are divorced without an annulment and civilly remarried to receive Holy Communion, that creates a whole nother problem, especially within the confessional. If someone has a mortal sin on their soul, is an objective state of mortal sin, is not repentant, that whole confession is sacrilegious. If a priest knows this, grants absolution, sacrilege. Not only that, but they can then exteriorly, outside the confessional, can continue to live a sacramental life, a normal life within the church. So the question is, why apply for annulment? Why ask for one? Why even ask for one? What does it change? What doesn't change? And so when it comes to, okay, SSPX, what authority do you have? CMRI, what authority you have to grant annulments? Whatever else. Now that Amoris Laetitia exists, if you're asking that question to these guys because you think the Novus Ordo is better, what does it matter? Amoris Laetitia. They can just do it. What does it matter? That's how bizarre the Novus Ordo Institute has become. It's a synodal. It's not even a church. I used to call it the synodal church. It's not a synodal church. It's a synodal circus. With a red fuzzy nose.
Absolutely. All right. So let's see. Tyson Ike asks, Father, are you an old Catholic priest or a trad Roman Catholic priest? Answered, trad Roman Catholic priest.
Try Roman Catholic.
Then Tyson Ike also asked, what do you think about the SSPX? You answered, Father, if the SSPX is the TLM you can access, feed your family.
Exactly.
There we
Feed your
go.
family. Be trad. Be Catholic. Be Catholic.
The what's the way that I view it is really what's the most important thing is what happens within the walls of your home. Do we have now one thing that I personally don't love about the SSPX is that I think this really, I don't know if it has anything to do with the priest, but I feel like a lot of the times there can be this culture of, oh, just drive like 3 or 4 hours to mass. And one thing that Anthony on Avoiding Babylon talked about, which I really appreciated, and I thought that it was very spot on in a recent stream. I think they were posting the clip on Twitter. Was look, because Anthony happens to have like older children. I think maybe very late teens, and so he says, look, driving 4 hours to mass may work when your child has literally no option but just to get there, get in the baby seat and get strapped on, and then you're coming anyway. But as they're growing older, that is really not the best strategy, and that may not work out because the children are going to hate it. And we have to put ourselves back into that position, Father. I think of when we were 15, 16, if my parents said, look, we're getting in the car for, I mean, even like over 40 minutes to go to church, no, who would like that? No, I don't think anybody would like that unless you're like unless you have a highly saintly child, which we have to assume that we're not going to have, that it's going to be a process. Who would like that? So but I do agree with, if that's a TLM you can access, feed your family. And then Caritas Veritate, Father, are there any plans for your order to open additional missions in other sites in Florida? I think
this is a great plug. This is a great plug for the Procedamus Gala. Listen, if you're limited in resources, if you can't provide a house, lodging arrangements for a priest, at least a storefront for a chapel, these sorts of things, don't expect a chapel. Like, what do you think? That priests are millionaires that can go and just show up anywhere and just provide for a couple of faithful? No. Tithing exists for a reason. The plans of opening any chapel depends on the laity and their commitment. You want a priest? You pay for a priest, which means renting the storefront, providing a place for him to live, giving him a stipend enough reasonably for him to be able to live. Utilities, food, lodging, these sorts of things. If you don't have a group that's willing to do these sorts of things, then don't expect a TLM. So what does that mean for the laity? It might mean moving to a place where there's other laity that are ready to get this money together, a group together to do things, or it might be providing to an organization like the Sea of Caer-Glow, giving them the money to open a chapel in a particular logical place to where there could be, if you spent time building, but they have to have enough money to spend, even though they're not receiving money from the chapel. They have enough money in their bank accounts to invest in that particular area to then grow a particular chapel. So there's those two things. Either you get your lay people around you together to fund there being a chapel in your particular area, or you donate to an organization that is willing to provide a chapel, even if there's only like 2 or 3 people there, to invest in 1 or 2, 3, 5 years there to then grow the situation. So those are the two options. We have plans to grow in the sense that if we have the resources to grow, let's grow, of course. But the whole question is the resources. So that's why we have the Procedamus Gala. If you're serious about traditional Catholicism, put your money where your mouth is. If you're, for instance, give up marriage, give up family, give up my own career, give up everything. There's basically nothing left I have to give up. Like, I have no money. Like, there's nothing left. I've got nothing left. I've given you guys my all. But then when benefactors come to us or wherever, they're like counting pennies. Okay. So that's not the attitude I have to you guys. But apparently for benefactors, like the attitude I get. Fine, whatever. So I've given you everything. If you want a chapel, put your money where your mouth is. Simple as.
And of course, it's not only about resources, Father. It's also about manning it. So
Yeah.
the one big problem that we're having right now as a whole is that we have more people asking for the sacraments than priests to really administer them. So that's a problem because the Catholic faith, we need bishops and we need priests. So we can have all the money in the world, which would be helpful, but we don't have anybody that wants to be a priest.
Well,
And
also too, I get SSPX faithful attacking me on Twitter, saying I'm illegitimate, all that kind of stuff. So you talk about having not enough SSPX priests to staff even the SSPX needs, but then you go and attack other trad priests that we can't even go to them.
all right, let's see. We're getting here to our final question, and then we're at about an hour. It's probably a good time to stop. And maybe this has been fun. Maybe we'll be back next week. Let's see.
Oh, yeah.
Amy asks again, Father, do you have a place for older women that can join the cloister? I keep getting told I'm too old, not that old, 51. LOL. I feel the calling in my heart. I only want to be Jesus' spouse.
As I was just saying, it's a matter of resources. If you want to start something, create a foundation for donations, raise money for a convent, all that kind of stuff. We'll put you under our spiritual authority. Fine. But again, it's a matter of resources. Like, no, we don't have extra houses, just randomly houses, especially here in Florida. Like, so I'm looking up for houses for my friends to move closer so that we can have a Scola, we can have MCs, quality MCs, all that kind of stuff. And it's like 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, like 400,000. So it's like, Ron DeSantis is trying to get rid of property taxes here in Florida. I'm like, well, that's the least he can do here, because like 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom, $400K. That's insane. The price. I mean, it's really hard for a young family to buy a house here in Florida. It really is insane. I mean, especially for a Republican state, it's kind of scandalous for what a Republican is supposed to be for. But no, I mean, again, it all comes down to resources, guys. It all comes down to resources, and people want to keep their resources. So you have grifters out there saying, "Don't donate to the Novus Ordo institution. Don't donate to Peter's Pence." Okay, so what? Are they saving all that money in their pockets and just going out and buying ice cream instead? Or are they putting it to the preservation of the faith and to helping people fulfill their vocations and helping us carry on? They're not doing anything. So they're just not doing anything. They're just complaining, putting all their money in their pockets, and then spending it on themselves. It's selfish. Absolutely selfish. This is why I'm so adamant against the grifters online. It's because they have an incredible platform to promote themselves, to tell you to stop donating money, keep it all in your pockets, keep them all in their pockets, and not benefit absolutely anything, not build absolutely anything. They're not building anything. They're not constructive. They're sterile. They're as sterile as contraceptives. They're traditional Catholic contraceptives in a spiritual way, not in a biological way, but in a spiritual way, because they're not producing anything. They're not producing anything. They're not producing vocations. They're not giving money to organizations that will continue to grow and provide the traditional at Mass. They're not building anything. There's nothing in the future that is coming from these grifters. Nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality, Father, is that if you run a business, you know that literally just existing and not bringing in any revenue costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
you have to work to break even.
So trad priests don't just come out and sort of are able to offer the sacraments and do all of the work that they have to do, and they do have to be and provided for. So that's one thing to consider. So we're trying to work hard to be able to make that happen. But that is a reality. And then the other side of the problem, Father, is, as I think you mentioned it during tonight's stream, is that you get benefactors that have a lot of money but that expect sort of what we were talking about at the beginning, the church and state. It's a problem. It was a problem when the princes held the church hostage to do whatever they wanted. That was always a problem. And so, frankly, in this day and age, we have a similar situation, but with benefactors that benefactors don't just, okay, I have this amount of money. I mean, a lot do. A lot of people that have been very generous with the Oblates of St. Augustine, but talking about other types of benefactors that want to give money, but that want to feel like they have ownership. And that is not a Catholic model. Money is given to the church for the church to administer, and otherwise there's really not a lot of merit in that way. But yeah, that's another thing to consider, because it's not like just finding a benefactor is going to solve everything. It has to be the right type, somebody that is trying to give money with a pure intent and with an honest intent of helping the church, and not just feeling like they can buy a priest or buy a bishop or whatever. That's also a thing to consider. But anyway, great questions. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much, Amy, for your questions. And yeah, maybe we'll be back next Friday. This was great. Father, anything else before we go?
I don't know. I had a lot of fun. Procedamus.com. Guys, everybody, come to our gala. Come on. It'll be fun to meet up,
Yes.
hang out.
What are you doing? This is very, very true and very important. Procedamus.com. Okay.
You could all meet each other, hang out with all of us, have conversations, other traditional Catholics. We see that our communities are few and far between of people to talk to and all that kind of stuff. Come on.
Absolutely. So Procedamus.com, go get your tickets today. And we have to be serious about promoting traditional Catholicism. And we'll see you all next week.
All right. God bless.
We're out.
Why Procedamus? I remember the day after my ordination, the morning of my first Mass, vesting in the sacristy, putting on the amice, putting on the alb, the cincture, the maniple, the stole, the vestments. I remember the 10 years that I had been preparing for this moment. Aside from the emotions and the nerves, I was aware of what offering the holy sacrifice of the Mass means for myself and for all the faithful. But additionally, given the context of the current persecution of the traditional Catholic faith in the world and in the church, I grabbed my chalice, I grabbed my biretta, looked at the crucifix, bowed, and said, Procedamus in pacem, to which the altar servers replied, In nomine Christi, Amen. I put on my biretta, and we processed out to the altar to offer the holy sacrifice of the Mass, the traditional Latin Mass, the Mass of the ages. Ascending the steps of the altar, I felt only gratitude to our Lord for having allowed me to be an instrument in preserving that which is true, good, and beautiful for future generations, for the ages to come. As long as I'm physically able, this Mass will continue to be offered. This spirit of determination, this spirit of perseverance, is that to which I would love to invite all of you to share. The first annual Procedamus Gala is organized to support the mission of the Oblates of St. Augustine and the Old Roman Catholic See of Caer-Glow, to preserve the traditional Latin Mass and the traditional Catholic faith for future generations. Procedamus.